Hi, Kristin Woodson here, Customer Success Manager with DataSet. Today I'd like to talk to you about the PowerQueries Join command. You're probably aware that your PowerQueries provide functionality in DataSet that allows you to group and summarize your log lines and calculate statistics to give you a new level of insight to your data. The Join command allows you to execute MySQL-style subqueries, which allows you to associate disparate information from different log lines in your data. The example I will use in this video is a table that's keyed off of user ID and has information on the number of requests and response time. And I'm going to associate that with a second subquery that maps from user ID to email address. If instead you'd like to map using a static lookup table, we can do that using the lookup command. We're going to cover the lookup command in a separate video. So if we want to take a look at the join command, let's take a look at the example I've created for you. So I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of the join using the join command. And here you can see what we're doing is I've started off with a filter. So I'm filtering by server host app server 1. I also have a filter on top where user contains you. You'll notice in my log lines here, each of these log lines contains a request ID, a user ID, and a response time in milliseconds. So I'm going to now flip from search to Power Query. And you'll notice this keeps my filter. Power Queries always start with a filter. And the next thing I want to do here is I'm going to group by user. And I've saved the example here that I wanted to do a little bit earlier. So again, what I wanted to do is group by user, and I'm creating a few new columns, one of which is the count of the total number of requests for each user. The other, I'm going to run the P90 function on the time MS, which means this is going to give me the 90th percentile response time in milliseconds for each user. And you'll see we've got the by user here at the end there. So that has that for each user. And now as I scroll here, you can see each user. I can also see the number of requests and their 90th percentile response time. So what we want to do next is we want to map from user ID to email address. To do that, I'm going to need to run a second subquery that will function as my lookup table. So I'm going to keep this here and do a new search. I'm going to remove the user contains you filter, and instead of filtering by app server, I am going to filter by my KW of MySQL log here. And in these log lines, you can see we have the email, we have a user table, and a status. And this again is going to serve as my lookup table in my join. So I'm going to click on search in Power Queries. And again, the filter stayed. So we're just filtering by log file here. And I just want to set out the columns for user and email. And if I hit search, now we can see I've got my user and my email mapped out nicely here. So in order to do the join, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy my second subquery. We're going to go back into the first query, and I'm going to start by putting in join here. Now I'm going to put my first query in parentheses. And I'm also just going to put it all in one line here, as I find this just makes it a little more organized and easier to view. And I'm going to now copy and paste. So I'm going to paste. This was my previous query. Again, let's just move that up into one line. And we're going to put the parenthesis. Now we do need a comma here in between my two queries. And now what we want to do, because we're going to map our user ID to the email address, we're going to do a join of the two queries, and we're going to join them on user. So I'm going to click. You can actually see the keyword is auto-suggesting for me here. Oh, help if I typed in user. And let's just see what happens when we run that. So now we can see we have our user, we have our requests, we have our P90 time in milliseconds, and we also have the email addresses. Basically, when we run the join, what we did is we executed both of the queries to get two tables back, and then for each row in the first table, I'm looking up based on the user value. The first match I get in the second table, I'm going to take the email value from that row and put it in a new column in my output table. By default, we will do a left join. What that means is we will go through every row of my first table, and even if we don't find a value for user, we will just go ahead and put in a null value. So I will get one row in my output that corresponds with one row in my first table input. If instead I did an inner join, then we would skip rows where we didn't have a match on the user table. Again, for this example, I'm using a left join, which is the default here. So when I go ahead and run this and get a new column that maps from user ID to email address, now as a finishing touch here, I can go ahead and change the order of the columns so that I have the email address on the left. So let's do that now. And you can see I put my columns, user, request, P90, and now I have a nice table that shows me what the response time is for each one of these users. So if I want to have the slowest response times, I can sort by my P90 time NS. And now I can see my users that were having the slowest user experience on the website. So that's an example of a quick join between two sets of data within your logs. I hope you found this useful, and you're ready to start thinking about ways that you can apply this to your own data. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@dataset.com should you have any questions.